These are two critical legislations. One, a money bill, which has to be thoroughly examined. The other one is a taxation bill. There is no such tax known to the laws of this country as we speak. We are just being invited now to pass this law, and by so doing, if we do so, and there is concurrence, and there is assent, then it becomes law. And I don't think that these two should be considered together in the way and manner we have done. So if I have my way, Mr. President, I will say that we should step down the second bill, which is about taxation of banks, profits of banks. We cannot grow our economy, we cannot run our government by continually taxing our people, whether they are corporate citizens of Nigeria or whether they are individuals. And let it not be said that this Senate, without the benefit of a public hearing, without the benefit of economic experts, financial experts, advising us about the propriety of this legislation, and most importantly also, the timing of this legislation. I just thought that I should make that caution so that we don't end up like the National Assembly did a few months ago, when the National Assembly hurriedly passed a legislation that sought to tax, telcos, to fund cyber terror activities and so on. And even though the bill was signed and approved, it was promptly withdrawn because of the outcry. I think that we should be very cautious when we are imposing taxation on citizens of our country, because we are managing a depressed economy. Even these banks now, as we speak, are all running around to meet up the recapitalization policy that has been prescribed by this government. So I think that we should step down that legislation so that we can have the benefit of expert opinion and guidance on it. And it should not be used as a basis, therefore, for even funding our supplementary appropriation bill that we are here to consider. Having said, I've just spoken on the second one.
It's not supplementary, it is just an amendment of the existing budget.
Yes, but it's the same thing. Whether it's supplementary or amendment, it's one and the same thing. Okay, so it's an amendment. Now, on the amendment, Mr. President, we have had some conversations during the executive session, and there is consensus. And I don't think anyone here is opposed to the passage and consideration of the supplementary appropriation bill. But I just wanted to make some clarifications. One, I hope, even though we have not seen the details, even though our rule says we should see the detail, it has not been circulated, but we know that we have been assured that we are going to get copies. But I just want to observe that maybe at the committee level, those projects that were omitted inadvertently, we have been told, in the main appropriation bill will be included, one. And then this is a money bill, Mr. President, so we need to all raise our inputs. I hope that just as we are making plans to make provisions for the minimum wage, which is appropriate, and we need to support that, we should also consider that provisions be made for a critical infrastructure that has been dug in our budgets year in, year out, the East-West Road, that has been under consideration for 20 years. I so move. Thank you.
The only point made by Senator Dixon, with profound respect to him, because he's my brother, we are from the Sub-South, we were both governors together. He hosted us very lavishly a couple of times when Nigeria was a bit. I think that with due respect to him, he cannot support an expenditure and question the source of funding the expenditure. So you can't support the amendment to the supplementary for infrastructure and not endorse the sound of funding it. So I'm sure even after listening, he may wish to have a rethink. Experts are in this house. And even me, I refuse to be intimidated by people who call themselves experts. Because sometimes they just deploy their private values and substitute it for expert opinion. So I commend the president for this supplementary budget. I'm particularly appreciative that he recognizes that they shouldn't go into agreement with the...
It's not supplementary, it's an amendment. It's an amendment to the existing budget, taking money from this head to the other one, and so on. So it's not supplementary, just to...
That's right.
To understand, yeah.
But critical to that, as the Senate leader reminded us, is that it includes providing for the personnel costs arising from minimum wage upward adjustment. Because that upward adjustment of the bottom will have implication for the top. So overall, the personnel expenditure that was in the budget originally can no longer stand in view of the pending minimum wage. And it is only right that the president understands that he can't go into agreement without the money being available, which is why the payment of the minimum wage is the most important explanation for increases in personnel costs. So I urge my colleague that, like my distinguished brother there said, this is not about rubber stamping. It's about recognizing emergency. It's about taking into account our own calendar with regards to whatever, and doing what is right, and providing legal backing for an idea that nobody can fund. Sir, lastly, our Senate leader, in commending Mr. President for acting in a manner that we remind Nigerians that whatever discomfort they have suffered as a result of some of the bold decisions he has taken, whether in the area of withdrawal of subsidy and the obvious anticipated hardship, and of course the foreign exchange rate, which is rather an intricate policy because on the one hand, we have seen the Naira depreciating. On the other hand, the good side of it is that there are no more Nigerians who become billionaires because they are relations of the central bank, because that rent has been removed. It takes courage of a president to say, I will not benefit the way some people in the previous system had benefited. What we are now dealing with is how do the ordinary Nigeria benefit from these bold policies? By devoting substantial part of the amendment bill to deal with infrastructure. And incidentally, a lot of these infrastructures are the ones that not only create jobs, they create good paying jobs and sustainable jobs for our engineers, for our senior technicians, and even for the laborers, as well as even mama put that will emerge wherever construction work is going on. Each time you use your ATM machine, or you make a transfer, the bank deposits you. I'm not sure which law provides for that. So if the bank devises ways and means of taking from even the poorest of the poor, if the poorest farmer among God transfer money to another poor farmer, the bank takes 15 naira commission. So if they had divided these tools to enrich the banking system, these corporate citizens, in fact, it is consistent, Mr. President, with the progressive credentials of our party, the All Progressive Congress, to take from the rich and provide for the poor. That is what will lead to stability. To allow the rich to get away with excessive wealth on the ground that we have not provided laws to enable us take the excess profit to stabilize the system is to be short-sighted. So I commend the executive, and I want to commend the leadership for facilitating that we deal with this matter expeditiously so that the president can get going and companies involved in infrastructural provision can have a renewed hope, and in the end, Nigeria can see that they lost one and they gained two. I am completely in support that this second reading be passed so that we can deal with this matter and conclude it whether this week or no later than next week.
Or finance bill. Mr. President, if you can remember, during the year end, central bank issue a policy that no bank pay dividend from the foreign exchange gain. And that money make up the shareholders' fund. And if that money make up the shareholders' fund, Mr. President, I see no reason why the fund will not be taxed. This bill come at the right time for banks to be taxed for the foreign exchange gain made by the banks, because they made a lot of money for the year 2023. As such, I'm in support of the Finance Act, and I'm in support of the tax on the foreign exchange gain. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chairman, Committee on Appropriations.
For those who have reservation on the taxing of the banks, as you can see in the narration of the bill, it's a one-off on the windfall, which is as a result of the forex gains made by this bank. And my brother has said, as a result of the rate unification, as a result of exchange rate gain differences, which already is there. But the government has to come through legitimate means for us to have access to the fund. And that is what this bill tends to address. So by and large, Mr. President, very distinguished colleague, I want to say that it's in order, and I can see from the contribution of my colleagues that they are in full support of the bill. And I also want to join them in saying that we should give this bill an expeditious second reading so that we can get to work. I so summon, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you.
The bill is explicit enough. It's amending the existing acts of the Parliament regarding the Appropriation Act that was passed by the Senate. And what the bill intends to do, not so much radical changes in the 2024 Act, but to bring into the Act all those critical infrastructure that needed to be attended to, which include all the coastal road, the railway lines, the CNG, irrigation, and agricultural implement, and so on and so forth, so as to take care of the food crisis and the food shortages in the country. All these are the components of the 3.2 trillion. That is why we refer to it as the Renewed Hope Infrastructural Fund, and other critical infrastructures are captured under this 3.2. And as for the remaining 3 trillion, which is the recurrent component, to take care of the recurrent expenditure of the government. What now constitute that now depends on what we might be the federal government, the executive might be looking at. But the total of 6.2 trillion is to amend the 2024 budget, which was passed. And in terms of funding, yes, new revenues are coming. And I want to thank and also commend the executive for taking this bold initiative in ensuring the availability of this fund before this proposal is being put forward before the Parliament.
I think this amendment is coming at the right time. And I just want to make a short comment to what the most distinguished Senator Seriake have said regarding the finance bill. The money bills are very important bills. Now, whenever we are deliberating on them, we need to be a bit careful so that it will be seen that what we are doing is in tandem with the realities of our economy. The fact is that if you look at the end of the year reports of most of the commercial banks in this country, you will agree with me that despite the difficulties Nigerians are facing, you will see how these commercial banks report their end of the year profits and loss accounts. And most of them, you will see that the profit they have made tripled. How is it possible that they are, making this? Despite the high rate of interest rates, how are these commercial banks making this money? So, for me, if it is a one-off thing that the federal government have looked at in terms based on the ratio of profitability that these banks have made, that they should be taxed in order to contribute to the infrastructural development of this country, I think it is a welcome measures that Mr. President have really looked at, and we should give all the necessary support to do that. I believe taking certain percentage out of that profit, and this profit they made it within a short period because of the pronouncements that this government have made, especially on the issue of bridging the differences we have in foreign exchange. The country is still trying to come back to terms in terms of our economic difficulties that Nigerians are facing, but you will see that it gave advantage to some people. And that advantage shouldn't be just limited to some people. The reason for removal of subsidy, the reason for bridging the gap in foreign exchange is for the good of this country. As such, I'm in full support that we should look at the books of the banks in terms of their profitability in area of foreign exchange and do the necessary adjustments so that the country can also benefit. This is my candid opinion. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Even though you are the chairman of Committee on Finance, the bill will...
My colleagues in lending my voice to this all-important bill. Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues, I think that, number one, on the issue of the 2024 Appropriation Act, I think that I fully support this proposal because, as we all know today, part of what we need to continuously do in the environment and particularly in the economy is to continue to find a way to improve all of our infrastructure. And I think the focus of this particular amendment is in that area. And of course, you know, with infrastructure, you create more jobs. You also, we also reduce logistics cost, which is also part of the major cost. If you look at the composition of the inflation index, part of what accounts for the rising inflation too is in the area of logistic cost in terms of movement of goods and services. And I think that, you know, projects that are focused, that are properly identified here, will continuously help us reduce some of the pressure that we see in this in the sectors, the various sectors of the economy. Now, speaking to the other proposal, which is the Finance Act amendment, and specifically relating to windfall tax, I also support it wholeheartedly because I think that this is we should also salute the executive for being ingenious in taking advantage of this opportunity. The windfall that we are looking at here, the reality is that the banks themselves will have done a proper dimensioning of both their foreign assets and liabilities. And that is how come they will arrive at some profit, which they will have taken into their accounts for the year ended 2023. And just like one of my colleagues mentioned, these are profits that will have arisen from the policy decisions of this current administration, particularly around the liberalization of the foreign exchange market. So taking a one-off charge of it, I think is smart enough so that they don't just continue to report it as their own creation, because it's a creation of the opportunities in the environment. So, and importantly as well, it is also a way to continue to be very creative in looking for revenue areas for the country, such that our reliance or the incidence of borrowings are also reduced. And also in funding all of these capital expenditure that we are talking about, or the amendment that we are putting forward, also we are creating avenues for funding it. So on my part, I fully support the proposals as presented. Thank you, Mr. President, and my distinguished colleagues.
Distinguished colleagues,
I am Muhammad Adam Aliru, representing the good people of Kebbi Central, Kebbi State. I rise to second the motion, very ably moved by the leader of the Senate. Mr. President, it is necessary for us to support this bill because of the following reasons. First and foremost, the minimum wage, which we are waiting for, is coming very soon. The bill is coming to the National Assembly very soon. And as a prerequisite for passing it, we need to get funding. And the only way we can get funding is by passing this amendment. So it is important for us to pass this amendment so that there will be money that will be enough to pay the minimum wage. Because the 2024 appropriation, there is nothing for the minimum wage. And as you rightly know, distinguished colleagues, if we don't provide money for minimum wage between now and end of this month, there will be public outcry, but the workers will definitely go on strike. And for us to contain it, it will be hard. In fact, we have waited for too long. I commend them for their patience. And I also commend Mr. President by sending this very important amendment to the National Assembly for passage. Secondly, Mr. President, there are legacy projects that are not adequately funded in the budget. And this legacy project, as you rightly know, are critical. Number one, the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Road, and we also have the proposed Badagry-Sokoto Road. There are also other important road projects in the country that are forwarded in this bill, in this amendment. And if we don't pass this amendment, it will be difficult to fund this critical project. I therefore support the passage of this amendment, and I urge all my colleagues to do the same. Lastly, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, the source of funding is also important. We are not just amending the act without looking at how the money is coming from. If you have a budget, you also have to look at the sources of funding. It is clearly stated in this lead debate by the leader of the Senate that there will be tax imposed on foreign gains realized by banks in their 2023 financial statements. I'm happy that the money is not coming from ordinary people. It's coming from banks. And we all know that banks are making huge profits. In fact, that's why everybody is now willing to set up a bank because of huge amount of money that they are getting. A bank will declare close to about 500 billion naira. There is no business you can do in this country where you can get this kind of money. 500 billion naira. And this money is not, being taxed properly. So I support this amendment to the Finance Act because this money is going to be used to fund not only infrastructure and even social services like education, healthcare, and other related services that are critical and necessary. So I therefore support or second the motion ably moved by the leader, and I urge all my colleagues to do the same. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Aller. For purpose of guidance, since this is an amendment,
The Finance Act 2023 Amendment Bill seeks to amend the Finance Act 2023 to impose and charge windfall tax on banks
and to provide for the administration of the tax generally in the country. Mr. President, my highly respected colleagues, you will recall that the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, through a communication to the President of the Senate, forwarded both bills to the Senate today, being Wednesday, 17th day of July 2024. Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, the 2024 Appropriation Act Amendment Bill is needed to fund the Renewed Hope infrastructure project and other critical infrastructure projects to be undertaken across the country, and to also meet recurrent expenditure requirements necessary for proper operations of the federal government expenditure, which is to be funded by expected revenue accruing to the federal government. Furthermore, the proposed amendments to the Finance Act 2023 are required to impose a one-time windfall tax on foreign gains realized by banks in their 2023 financial statements to fund capital infrastructure development, education, and healthcare access, as well as public welfare initiatives to give sound and solid footing to the renewed hope agenda of Mr. President and Commander-in-Chief. Finally, I believe that all the proposals in this bill are laudable and will enhance the critical needs of the citizens of our dear country. I thank you, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, for your esteemed attention.
Now, before I yield this debate on the second reading of these two bills, and I want to also thank the executive for his foresight and his wisdom to identify the particular revenue we've been talking about and get it harvested so as to boost our revenue accruals. This is wonderful. It shows that the executive is up and doing in terms of making sure that we get every revenue that should accrue to the coffers of the government into the coffers of the government. This is wonderful, and this kind of vigilance, economic vigilance, is what is required of a leadership, and we commend the president for doing so. And not only that, also instead of bringing supplementary appropriation bill, but the executive decided to amend the existing act to get monies, from one end to the other to take care of legacy projects like the coastal roads, the Badagry, Degree Road, Sokoto Road, and so on and so forth, and other projects as outlined by the Senate Committee Chairman on Appropriations. This is a wonderful thing, and of course, to also take care of the minimum wage issue. This is really something to commend the President for doing the right thing. So those in favor that this bill be now read this a second time, please say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.